Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now, the art of staking plants is not just to hold them upright, but to allow them to hang naturally and loosely without flopping over everything and squashing things. And I'm forever going around the jewel garden, just sort of lifting a bit, dropping it down, teasing them. So with plants like this is Crocosmia lucifer, rightly found in gardens all over the land at this time of year because it's so spectacular. And for me, it marks a new season here in the jewel garden because this rich vermilion is picked up by the intensity of the colours of the group 3 clematis, the burgundies and the purples and the blues, and you start to see sunflowers coming through and dahlias, and we have cosmos with sparks of colour. Very soon the tithonia will be growing too. All these rich colours jangling and jumbled together, and that's what the jewel garden is about. It's about colour, and this is its colourful season. On today's programme, we're celebrating people who are growing their own in extraordinary ways. Joe visits a community food growing project in Bristol.
Oh, you must be Alison.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Well,
Where's
I'm
that
just
one
a delivery man.
from? You've
I
done
have
really
not
well.
grown a thing.
We meet a couple in a remote part of Western Scotland that have transformed a derelict kitchen garden into one that is both bountiful and beautiful.
It was just full of beech material and weeds, and we knew it needed lots of attention. We decided that the best thing to do was start from scratch.
Rachel meets a grower who shares her own passion for cut flowers.
Oh gosh, I'm just getting that lovely fragrance
the bronze fennel.
from the fennel. It's
Yeah,
amazing,
it's
isn't it?
amazing. I
As
love
you
it.
go past.
I love it.
And I shall be looking at ways of making the most from plants that you can buy at this time of year. Now, I and many other people have been encouraging us all to let the grass grow, to have as much long grass as possible, which not only looks beautiful, particularly if you plant it up with bulbs in spring, but also is one of the best things you can do to encourage wildlife. But in order to keep it going and to keep it being brilliant for wildlife and looking good, you do need to cut it. You need to subject it to what it really amounts to a haymaking regime. You let it grow, you let it flower, you let it go to seed, and then you cut it. And you keep that variety and freshness that makes it so beautiful. Now, the first thing to do before cutting is just get a stick and go through making a noise, talking, shouting, stamping, just to make sure that there are no little creatures that might be damaged by whatever you use to cut it. Okay, that's that done, and that means you too. Come on, matey, out the way. That's simple enough, but by far the most important piece of this is raking it all up. Don't worry when you cut it, and it doesn't matter what you use to cut it. You can use a scythe, you can use a machine like I did, you can use a strimmer. It's all the same effect. If you expose bare soil is good because the seeds that fall, the wildflower seeds, need to be in contact with soil in order to germinate. And remove all the material, because if it rots down, it'll feed the soil. And if it feeds the soil, the plant that will benefit most is grass. So we want to reduce the grass as much as possible. So we'll just rake this back. Having cut the path, that gives me access to the bank, which I'll do with a strimmer, and then rake it down and take it all away. And this will all compost. Management of long grass is very simple as long as you just remember the basic thing, which is to cut it at least once a year and remove everything that you cut and let it grow into winter short. You don't want long grass as the bulbs start to emerge in January and February. And then don't cut it until everything has flowered and seeded. And if you do that every year, it will look good, it will give fantastic cover for a wide range of wildlife, and it'll be fantastic for pollinators. Now, Joe has been down to Bristol to visit a project which has found almost by accident that it is supplying a wide range of organic fruit and veg for the local community.
The pleasure of growing your own can never be underestimated. Whatever the size of your plot, the satisfaction of planting something, nurturing it, and then eating it is huge. But growing your own also means you can share your harvest with those who need it the most. And that's what some brilliant forward-thinking people in Bristol decided to do. Back in 2020, at the start of the pandemic, garden centres were forced to close. But at Blaze Nursery, they were determined that thousands of fruit and veg plants wouldn't go to waste.
What are we going to do with nearly 10,000 plants? When we decided to give the vegetables away, it was at a time when people were most at need.
This generous gesture of support for the local community was so successful, it marked the beginning of a pioneering project.
The overall aim really of the project is to feed people and to get food on tables that is healthy, it's local, sustainably grown in communities where it may not currently be happening.
Ella Foreman from Bristol City Council joined forces with Blaze Nursery to create a food growing network that would supply food banks in the city.
So it's just those ones, and I'll grab the others now. Rod, who runs the nursery, he reached out to myself and asked if I knew any community growing groups that could make use of the plants and be able to donate them to food banks.
3 years on, and that idea has become a huge success.
The peas are looking good, and the chard. It's all looking pretty good, isn't it?
Now each May, the nursery is at the heart of the operation as plug plants are delivered to projects who need it most.
We need healthy food, don't we, to be healthy. So to be able to provide fresh vegetables, it's brilliant, and long may it continue.
The plug plants from the nursery are delivered right across Bristol to allotments and community groups who grow them on ready for harvest. The amount of work and people involved is incredible.
Lovely jubbly, thanks.
Well, after months of growing on in the rain and sunshine, I've come to Golden Hill Allotments and Community Garden to meet the people behind the project and help harvest whatever's ready. Well, what a fantastic site this is. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's just one of many, isn't it, that support the group. And how many groups are supported by the project?
So we support almost 60 groups around the city, and that's ranging from everything like you can see here today, so the allotments that are run by the local community to private growing spaces, and also schools that are growing within their grounds as well.
Right, and for you, why is it so important?
It means that we're giving people that might not have access to the fresh fruit and vegetables that are provided by people that are growing through the project. It means that they've got access to these locally produced and harvested vegetables. They can learn about growing, learn about where their food comes from, and it's all grown within the city, peat-free, and supports healthy eating as well.
I've got to eat the produce just to check it's all right. Oh, that's good, peppery, really good. Food miles don't get much shorter than this.
A short push of this barrowful will bring you to the Ardagh Community Trust.
Oh,
Isn't it
wow, it's
fantastic?
amazing. On the site of an old tennis court where growing food is the name of the game, volunteers help Family Food Action sort the much-needed harvest.
Oh, you must be Alison.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Well,
Where's
I'm
that
just a
one?
delivery man.
You've
I
done
have
really
not
well.
grown a thing.
It looks fantastic.
There's a hive of activity here. There's people doing stuff everywhere. How often does this happen?
We do it once a week on Tuesdays. People collect on the Monday nights, Tuesday mornings, and then everything's brought up here. We distribute the food on Tuesday lunchtimes. Some people have got the food on their plates that night.
How many people are you helping?
About 1,500 people a week.
And with the cost of living as it is, people are really reliant on you.
They are.
Anyone who's got an allotment knows that you'll end up with a huge amount of produce at times of the year and don't know what to do with it, so this is the perfect solution.
It is. So we've had gluts of rhubarb, we've had gluts of runner beans, so it's fantastic. It's all coming from the local community and being distributed out to the local community.
This project feels really like a win-win, but it's not just families who benefit. Volunteer gardeners led by Steve Galpin also reap the rewards of growing. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Joe.
Doing a bit of harvesting there.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not just about the produce, though, is it, Steve? I mean, gardening has so many other benefits.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the mental health aspect of it is really important and valuable these days. We've been involved in social prescribing schemes where GPs can directly refer patients on to us, prescribe gardening for mental health problems, which is just an amazing project.
Yeah, so they come here, and have you seen the transformation in people?
Absolutely, yeah. It's almost instant sometimes. It's just incredible to see that kind of that thing go on, really. It's great.
Yeah.
10 minutes up the road is my final stop. At the Venge After School Cooking and Growing Club, Megan teaches kids the importance of eating what we grow.
Oh, you must be Meg.
Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
Good.
I've brought some local produce for you.
Oh, thank you. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, well, it's nice to know what happens to it. It ends up here, and what happens to it next?
Well, try and get it in some bellies. Feed the hungry children. And yeah, trying to educate them and their families a little bit as well. So I feel like there's a lot of food fear, not knowing where food comes from, how to cook it, how to process it. It connects you to each other, it connects you to your local environment, connects you to the ground under your feet. And if you get a good connection and relationship with food from a young age, your life's going to be a lot better. Can you reach?
Is that what you're making?
Kale chips.
Ah, they taste good?
Yeah.
So how long do you cook them for?
I don't actually know.
It depends how many kale chips
How do you
it
know
will
when
be.
they're done then?
When they're crispy.
Okay, until they're crispy. Yeah, that makes sense.
Does everyone like kale chips?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a really uplifting day. Growing edibles is not just about getting them from plot to plate, but it involves a lot more than that, and it brings communities together in a fascinating network. Kale chips, anybody?
Would you like one?
Thank you. Me.
Get in the queue, I've got to get in the queue.
I'm gonna tell you last one.
There's diversity involved, there's sustainability, it's about biodiversity, it's about mental health too. Hey! Gardening is really powerful.
Clearly, that's an inspirational scheme, and I love the way that it's grown out of what was a pretty catastrophic situation for so many people, and yet has come good. This year, I've changed the planting either side of the summer house here up on the mound. And this is all part of my response to the extremes of temperature that we're getting as a result of climate change. Because global warming, as we used to call it, doesn't just mean hotter days, it also tends to mean colder extremes in winter, sporadically and erratically in winter times. And this last winter, when it went down to -16 here at Longmeadow, that means that kills at a stroke anything that isn't heated and protected. And what I feel very strongly is that we can't go on protecting plants in winter by heating them in order to grow them in summer, because that's contributing to the problem. We have to cut that circle. So what I've done is to take the tender perennials, which are fundamentally bananas, cannas, gingers, eucomis, salvias, and I'm weaning them off the dual garden. I've still got a few in there, but I've taken them away and I'm not going to protect them this winter. So I have massed them either side of the building here to get a nice jungly feel, particularly when you look through the windows from inside the building. And if they die, well, it means I can't grow them, and I need to think about hardier plants that will adapt to these extremes of temperatures. And I just hope we have a mild enough winter for them to survive through till next year. It's time now to go to Lytham St Anne's to join Steve Richards in his garden. Now, Steve is an avid vegetable grower, but everything he grows, he does so with a purpose.
I was really into just growing all my own food. So we got the allotment and, life changed really. It's just such a lovely community here, lovely environment, so peaceful and tranquil. It's become a great sort of family place really. We spend a lot of time here. My name's Steve and this is my allotment on the Shepherd Road allotment site in Lytham St Anne's. This is where I grow veg all year round for my friends and family. Our main objective is just to grow a very wide range of veg. So we generally aim for between 30 and 35 different types of veg each week to be harvested. We don't grow particularly exotic things. Our focus is more on growing things early and growing things late. I like things that give me a continuous harvest. I've always managed to grow things early. Sometimes it means just starting things, for example, in October rather than starting them in February. Nowadays, I start things with grow lights. I like that because I can do that at home in a nice, controlled, warm environment. So one of the things I love to do is to start an early batch of kale in January under grow lights, and I get these planted out in March when most people are just starting to sow their kale. Just look at those leaves. It just doesn't get any better than that. So under here we've got my first early peppers. And they're just starting to ripen now, which is quite nice for the beginning of May. I basically just have a love of making things. After my career in engineering, I sort of moved into IT, and that's allowed me to create some great planning tools to manage all the different successions of vegetables. I pretty much try to never have a bed empty for more than a few days. I always want to have the next veg or the next fruit ready as the one's finishing. So as the winter spinaches are finishing, there's always something to follow those with, like the spring carrots. But the more you kind of understand your plants and how they grow and how deep the roots are, you can gradually figure out how you can pack more plants into the same space. So these are multi-sown main crop onions. They're Red Baron, and I just interplanted into those these lovely little cherry bell radishes. Take those out. And then there's loads of space for the onions to grow on. Different varieties are optimised for different times of year. So we grow a different carrot, for example, for summer, because we want a fast-growing carrot. When it comes to the carrots we want to eat in winter, we want a slow-growing carrot. So we want something that we plant in May, and it's incredibly crisp and sweet by the time it gets through to winter. During lockdown, we fed 28 people, lots of our elderly neighbours and friends, and it was a highlight of people's weeks. It was just lovely. I love growing food for other people. Now I'm enthusiastic about food, but there's nothing better than people coming round on a Sunday to collect their food and just gushing about how fantastic it is. For 16 years I had a pretty nasty autoimmune condition, and I was really suffering, so I decided to retire. I was really looking for something that would help improve on that condition. The combination of having my hands in the soil and all that soil microorganisms around, the rich, diverse diet, the relaxing environment, the gentle mobility, actually my sleep improved a lot, and it kind of healed me. I started off just with the raised beds, and then I realised that for almost no extra cost, I could just put this little side on here and that little edge on there, and then I got a cold frame. It transformed what we could grow, because just that layer of plastic makes a huge difference. The real beauty of a polytunnel is that there's somewhere to shelter in winter. The height lets you do things like these lovely early strawberries and, you know, the cucumbers and tomatoes and everything in summer. But it's also by far the best environment for growing lettuces and Asian greens and celery and parsley and things like that all through winter. I generally make all my own compost now, and I've got 4 bins. It's quite a production line really, getting enough compost to keep this plot going. Horse manure is kind of like the gold standard, and to that we just add layer after layer after layer of greens. Turn in, turn in, turn in, until we get down here to something like that. We always have this life of abundance. The combination of the kind of community spirit, the sense of purpose, the constant sense of progress, to always be harvesting every week, to always be sort of sharing that harvest with other people. Yeah, it's a wonderful way to live.
I find it fascinating when you see an engineer's mind, someone very practical, methodical, seeing a problem and working out how to solve it and then applying it in a systematic fashion. And that's quite unusual and obviously very effective. Now, I've been looking for plants that seem to be the unlikely candidates for what you would buy, but which I know are very good value. And they're good value not just because they're priced accordingly, but because of their potential. For example, I chose this geum. This is Geum nonna, lovely caramel flowers. The reason I bought this is not to plant it as an individual plant, but I know if I take that out of the pot, I can divide this up into a number of plants. I'm not doing any harm by just cutting down through the roots like that. So I've got myself 2 geums, each of which will very quickly grow as big as the parent one. So therefore I've halved the price of the plant, but I could go even further. So if I take one like this, what I can do is subdivide it again. So with a sharper knife, so we're going to cut down through there. Now, obviously, these have got a different amount of roots on, but they will all grow. Cut back the foliage, pot them up in small pots, they will establish, the roots will get growing, and then next spring, the top growth will respond and grow well, and you'll have a whole range of small plants ready to plant out in the garden, which very quickly will get established. And you can apply it to a whole bunch of plants, even house plants. I've got a piece here. And if you see, around the edge, are all these potential new plants growing. And if I just get my thumb in there, what I'm doing is I'm pulling the roots apart rather than the top growth. There we go. And then I can pull that, subdivide that down. Straight away we've got nice healthy plants, and this could come down again if I wanted to, but there you are, 2 really nice healthy plants that I can pot up, and the whole thing can be subdivided down. So find big plants that are either finished flowering or looking a bit scruffy, and just consider the option of buying them to create more plants, which might need a little bit of nurturing, might well just pot up and look good straight away, but will certainly be a bargain. Right, still to come on today's programme. Rachel meets a grower who shares her passion for cut flowers.
It's just wonderful.
If the foliage can give the scent that the flowers are not giving, then it comes out really special.
Completely.
Yeah, the bunches really come out special.
And we visit a couple that, despite the challenges of autumnal storms and their remote location on the west coast of Scotland, have restored a rundown wall garden to full productivity.
Nothing gets wasted here. It either goes into the compost or we feed the goats. There we go. And they know when I'm in here because they get their treats. There we go.
But first we're going to Devon to join Chris Timpson in his wall garden.
Just this absolutely sort of dreamlike quality that you can have in a walled garden. Walled gardens are such nostalgic spaces and they're so romantic, and that was something we were really trying to bring out in everything we're doing here, this sense of a bygone time, really. I'm Chris. This is our walled garden in South Devon, sandwiched in between Dartmoor and the coast. I live here with my wife Carmen and our 4-month-old son Billy. So we think the garden is about 200 years old, and it's the original kitchen garden for a larger house next door. We have a photo, an aerial photo from 1938, which just shows rows and rows of vegetables, so it was a fully productive space. So the core purpose of the garden is to grow food, and it always has been, so we wanted to really hold on to that. At the moment, the things that are looking great in the veg patch are the squash. We've had a bumper year for those, so they're sprawling all over the place. The rhubarb's booming. We've stopped picking it, but it's enormous. Everyone has a courgette glut at the same time, so it's always hard to palm those extras off. So we're trying to preserve as much as we can. Although it's a walled garden, it's essentially a walled garden with 3 productive walls, because one of the walls is our house. And each wall does have a different role to play. The north-facing wall at the bottom is cooler and damper, growing morello cherries there, some cooking apples and pears. On the east-facing wall, again, it's mostly espaliered apple, pears and plums that really thrive. They love that morning light. And then we've got the hot south wall at the top, where we've got nectarines, apricots and our outdoor tomatoes and peaches that just love that heat all day long. It was a complete miracle to me that we could actually grow a peach. So I didn't really realise you could grow them in this country until when we were starting to dig out the garden. We found quite a few of the old fruit tree labels that had been, attached to trees over the years. Started researching the different names of the trees on them and found there were 2 peaches that obviously used to be grown in this garden. So that's how we got onto the idea we could do it, and very proudly have won the open fruit class in our local garden show. This is the central area of the garden. It's very exposed, so it really bakes in the hot summer sun. So we went for a dry garden here with very much Mediterranean influence in the planting. We've got lots of lavenders, salvias, rosemaries, these beautiful old olive trees, and it's just been incredibly resilient to this very dry weather. It's just been looking really good with no rainfall for weeks and weeks, and it's absolutely crawling with pollinators. The scent in this part of the garden is amazing as well. You brush past these plants in the evening and you get this waft of lavender or rosemary, or you step on a little bit of thyme. It's really quite special. So as well as growing food here, we wanted to see what else we could use productively from the space. And Carmen for several years has been making soaps and body oils and pillow sprays. Using harvested lavender, chamomile, rosemary and mint. Those are some of her sort of signature recipes. So we're really trying to see what else can we get out of this walled garden. And cider is another big crop for us, mostly for personal consumption. So we're located in the parish of Staverton, which has a very rich history in the production of cider. So this whole parish was littered with orchards, and sadly a lot of them have died off now. So we wanted to maintain this historic tree in the garden. So we like to press all of our apples, with an old-fashioned press. So it's all done by hand. It's very labour-intensive, but it's a really rewarding process to spend a day in October out in the orchard with some friends, pressing apples and tasting some of the crop from last year. So with our early apples, we tend to juice them, but for the apples harvested in October, November, we're always making cider. So this is some from our 2020 crop, which was a bumper year and is now vintage. So, let's see how this is maturing. I'll see you next week, I think. The garden's quite fascinating in that you walk into it and you feel really held within these walls, and it is really like you're in a little bubble for a moment, and people come to see you and the time just flies. You know, they're meant to be here for half an hour and 2 hours later they look at their watch and realise they've completely missed the next thing. So there is this real magic of the space, the enclosure of it, and this kind of feeling of refuge when you arrive. And there's something we were really trying to conjure in this space about, you know, I love being in places where you could be in that same spot hundreds of years ago. I love creating those moments of timelessness. So that was something we were really trying to do. And there's this lovely place you can stand next to our potting shed and you can look out at the kitchen garden, and there's nothing of the modern world there. And I love those moments.
There's no question that if you're lucky enough to have a wall garden or access to a wall garden, there is real magic. You can see that I've managed to get 8 good plants out of the peace lily, and these are really quite sizable, healthy plants. That alone is a huge saving. I've kept some of the geums as a good size because they have to compete, but I've also potted up some smaller ones and put them in the greenhouse. And another thing which I didn't mention before, but is really worth considering when you go to a garden centre or nursery, is any plants that have finished flowering and are starting to go to seed. This is a candelabra primula. You can see that all these are seeds. And if you collect the seeds, you're going to get them in a quantity and very often of a variety that you can't get when you buy a packet of seeds. Very hard to buy these as seeds. Candelabra primulas, in fact, are best sown when the seed is green. You don't let it get too dry, so it's almost ready for sowing now, as soon as you can extract it. So buy plants if they're going to seed, keep the seed, sow them, bring them on, raise hopefully dozens of new plants, and you get to keep the parent plant. So that way, that's a huge saving. And all these things depend upon 2 things. The first is a preparedness to accept plants and to look for plants that are past their best or haven't yet achieved it, that look a little bit shabby, because they are going to be the ones that are most suitable for what we're doing. The second thing is a little bit of patience, that by subdividing them and planting them up, they need to have time for their roots to establish or to grow to a size that will work in your garden. But they will very quickly, and it means that next year, you'll have a load more plants really cheaply performing perfectly in your garden. Now, talking about plants performing perfectly, Rachel has been to visit a cut flower grower in Somerset.
I am absolutely passionate about growing cut flowers. There's just something so wonderful about nurturing them when they're in the ground and then cutting them to make a beautiful arrangement. It's fantastic.
I've come to spend the day with Isel Finch on her 3-acre plot in Somerset. She spends every waking moment successfully growing flowers for cutting, which is an extraordinary feat for someone who only a few years ago had never grown a plant directly in the ground.
Isel, everything is looking so beautiful, but tell me, how did you get started? Where did it all begin?
We only moved here in 2017, and then I thought of starting a flower farm based on just an interest in flowers and flower arranging. It's science, it's design, it's art, and it makes me feel good. As in telecommunications for most of my working career, and this horticulture knowledge is all very new to me. I am from Manila, Philippines. We don't have the seasons that you have here. The season's only 2 seasons. There's the wet season and the dry season. So 6 months of rain, 6 months of dry, but no winter. and it's constantly warm.
Was there any culture of gardening in your family, in your history?
No, we didn't do any gardening. Perhaps because there was the lack of space for garden. It was very urban, yeah, where I grew up. And the plants grew in pots.
It does seem to me that you have accomplished so much in such a short time. How did you begin to develop confidence with that, with the actual horticulture bit?
Yeah, I think the not knowing it all or not knowing as much in a certain way has given me more confidence. It's not aiming for perfection. It's
Completely.
Just, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
we're all still learning.
In just a few years, Isel has immersed herself in the world of cut flowers, and like me, she has a real passion for not just growing, but for arranging them. She's invited me to harvest a selection so we can create an arrangement.
These plants look fantastic. These achillea.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're absolutely gorgeous.
Absolutely gorgeous.
That you have got a really good and broad selection of plants here, haven't you?
That is right. Yes, we're moving more and more to more perennial plants than the annuals. The annuals we're finding require more work. They also need more water. And with the changing of the climate, that drastically when it's going more dry, hotter, probably more wet in some seasons, the perennials are more resilient to it.
Oh gosh, I'm just getting that lovely fragrance from the fennel. It's amazing,
it's
isn't it?
amazing. I love
as you
it.
go past.
I love it.
And also I see that you're really good at supporting the plants. You've got all sorts of things.
Oh, you can see the sheep fence.
Yes, hidden through here. That works really well. You just sort of arch it over.
Yes, it's so much easier than staking. Sheep fence is great because when they arch, they just stay there.
Very organised plot, I have to say.
And you can see the plot can also be a bit windy at times, and that's very good for getting them to stay in place and not break.
The stems get strong, don't they, if they're being bent around a little bit
yeah.
sometimes.
When it comes to cutting, Isel has a surprising favourite. It's a herb, an apple mint, and she loves it.
You've got to smell it, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh, aren't they amazing?
Oh, it's just wonderful.
If the foliage can give the scent that the flowers are not giving, then it comes out really special. Yeah, the bunches really come out special.
And what are some of the other foliage plants that you like to grow?
We have about 23 eucalyptus, and we've also got Viburnum opulus. And that's good because that's a whole year-round interest. Right now it has berries. Earlier on in the year, the berries were flowers.
So good to find plants that are very good value. They give you those different seasons, different colours, foliage, stems, berries, flowers.
Absolutely.
Super plants.
Yes. Same with sweet peas. We treat sweet peas more as foliage rather than flower. Yeah, we love the vines. We love the tendrils on our sweet peas.
That's so interesting.
Gives so much drama.
I never really thought about growing sweet peas for the actual shape, but yes, if you cut them low down enough,
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Armed with some Physocarpus diabolo, Hylotelethium and sweet peas, we're ready to get creative.
So many beautiful things here. I love using the mint because, I mean, it just smells so wonderful just standing here. But do you find sometimes that the stems, they can sort of wilt a little bit?
I find that if you put it a little bit of just water that's just boiled and it perks up, and after doing so.
It's looking very, very fresh, isn't it? I think that's beautiful, the cotinus.
I love
airiness.
This will be my frothy foliage.
Your froth?
My frothy foliage that I'm going to use. And we'll see if it catches all these summer tones and pastel tones. This one has a lot of space in between the flowers, and it's a lot about showcasing each and every flower in it, rather than just saying, I need to cover the boss. I need to cover that space because there is a space there. It's fine. Spaces are fine.
Yes.
And then the flower will do its bit. If it was leaning on the left, let it do that. If its natural tendency on the flower is to droop this way and that way, I tend to follow it in my arrangements. And then it looks more natural, more seasonal.
When you sort of think back, could you have imagined that you would be doing this?
No, not at all. I sometimes have no words to describe it. It feels really fulfilling. It's a good example that other people can see that it can be done. Doesn't need to be a uni degree. Just need a lot of fire.
Yes, a lot of passion.
A lot of passion, a lot of determination, and not stopping. And you get there.
I absolutely love this. I love the movement you've got from the sweet peas. Those sort of bend in the stems is lovely.
Thank
and
you.
how wonderful to nurture everything and then just get, you know, results like these from everything you've grown.
I'm going to
They're your babies, really, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm about to cry.
Don't cry. But it's fantastic.
Beautiful.
And I've had so much fun. Thank you.
Me too. Me too. Thank you.
I do like the use of perennials in flower arranging rather than just always focusing on annuals. And there's no doubt about it that there is a new generation coming through who are growing plants for cutting and using them in an exciting and dynamic way. We've had quite a good year for strawberries. Now, these are first-year strawberries. And as a rule with strawberries, in the first year, you're looking to establish a nice, healthy plant, and any fruit are a bonus. The second and third year is when they harvest really well. But strawberries start to lose productivity rapidly after the third year. So ideally, you throw them away in year 4. But to do that, of course, you've got to have new plants to keep that succession going. And the best way to do that is to take them from runners. Now, you can see, if we get down here and have a look, on these runners, these tendrils growing out from the parent plant, are plantlets. And there you can see one, and you can even see some roots starting to form. And that's how they reproduce. And if you don't clear or thin a strawberry crop, you get a mat of strawberries. And that's fine for the plant, and they can reproduce, but it's not good for getting the best fruit. So if you take good runners, grow them on, and use them to replace the old plants, it means you have constant circulation of plants without accumulating viruses and without having to buy new plants all the time. So if we take this one here, which has got good roots, nice healthy young plantlet, and just make a slight divot and pin it. Put one side of the plantlet like that, and another the other side, and then cut off anything beyond it because we don't want any energy to go past that into other plantlets. So we'll just cut that off there and take that off and leave it attached to the parent. And in about 2-3 weeks' time, we can dig that up and replant it wherever we want. Because you want to avoid viruses, you'd never replant the young plants in amongst the parents. You always go to a new plot. And if you do that every 4 years, you can work on a rotation, and that way you never get viruses building up in the soil. But for the moment, that can stay there. The second way to do it is to do them into a pot with a bit of compost. Fill a pot with ordinary potting compost. So we've got a nice plantlet there. That's growing well. Put the pot down, and in fact, I'm going to make a bit of a divot so that it stays put. Place that on top of the compost and then pin it in. And what will happen is the roots will grow and fill the pot. We'll cut off everything beyond it. And then, when that's well and securely grown into the pot, I can cut it free from the parent and I have a potted strawberry. Do this now, and then you can plant them out in September, which is the best time for planting strawberries, and that's your first year crop, which will develop into a good plant to give you the best possible harvest in 2 years' time. Now, growing anything here at Longmeadow, for all that I might complain about it, is actually relatively easy. We have lovely soil, the climate is pretty temperate, the ground is level, and there's a lot going for us. But we went to visit a garden in Knoydart, on the west coast of Scotland, where any kind of gardening is tough.
When I first got here, I just knew deep down this was the time for me to grow my own vegetables and food for the kitchen. We knew there was this walled garden, but my heart sank when I saw it. You know, we looked at it and just thought, wow, what a challenge. I'm Carol.
I'm David Ferguson, and we're on the Knoydart Peninsula at the very head of Loch Nevis, which is a sea loch on the west of Scotland.
You can only access this part of the world by boat.
Very mountainous terrain. There's nobody else really living around here for quite a number of miles, so it is very remote. We came over on the boat and, you know, we were quite apprehensive for a start. Further up the loch we got, we just felt, wow, look at this place, you know, this is absolutely stunning. And yeah, just immediately fell in love with the place.
We finally decided to take a month off, a very delayed honeymoon, and we went to New Zealand because we wanted to find the wilderness, and we had time to talk and be with each other. And we decided it would be really good to start working together. And then we saw this job advertised. It was almost meant to be unwritten for us. Look at these leaves. Look at the size of them. They're huge.
It's not a bad size one.
I know. Yeah. No. Dave is the estate manager who oversees everything here, and I'm the housekeeper and the cook, and we work as a team. We've moved here lock, stock and barrel, so we came here with all our animals. This is Mr. Brown, and Mr. Brown came with us. All there was this absolutely beautiful stone wall. It was just full of beach material and weeds, and we knew it needed lots of attention. We decided that the best thing to do was start from scratch. So we took a digger and scraped the whole lot out. We decided to start building these beds, long beds. We can get maximum growth, so it works. It's incredibly windy here. Anything, when there's a westerly wind, it just hits the garden, but this wall literally protects everything. We've got some beetroot, red vein sorrel. I love that. I love sorrel in a sauce. Nothing gets wasted here. It either goes into the compost or we feed the goats. There we go. And they know when I'm in here because they get their treats. There we go. So everybody, my job is to feed everyone.
There's very little soil around here. The topsoil is very thin, very acidic, very stony. So we thought, how on earth are we going to do this? We thought we've got this huge resource, which is the seaweed that's frequently washed up on the shore. So we researched that and thought we'd better try composting it. I'd say it's the most essential part of the compost that we make, full of macronutrients and a really good compost activator. So when the seaweed initially washes up, it's kind of like this stuff that's further down the beach there. However, over the course of the winter, coming into the spring, early summer, this is the kind of stuff that you've gotten. So it's almost composted already, to be honest. When you look at it, it's well broken down. We find mixing that with a bit of extra nitrogen, carbon, it works really well to make a good all-round compost. This is Mr. Brown's special compost ingredient. These are our compost bins. So now we'll get layering. I'll mix up the donkey poo, the seaweed and the goat bedding. So we'll start off with the seaweed. And now that we've got the seaweed in there, we'll add in a bit of carbon. Keep doing this until we basically fill the entire container. And then after about a week, we'll give it a stir, get the air going in there, and it should be heating up nicely. So in this one here, you can see we've got a compost blend that I made about 6 weeks ago, and you'll see the red wriggler worms there are doing quite well. I might add in some more worms, but Give that a couple of months and that'll be really good usable compost. You know, during the sort of autumn we do get these autumnal storms, and we get this really salty air coming off the sea that gets blown into the garden. It does have quite a big negative impact on things that we're trying to overwinter. So that's where the polytunnel really comes into its own.
I wanted every part of the polytunnel used because it's such a precious space. And when I got this challenge of never being able to grow chilies, I thought, well, I'm going to do that. So we've got a variety here which is so pretty but very lethal, called Jigsaw. The jalapenos are just starting to ripen now. And then this really amazing one called Joe's Long Cayenne, which is that big. It's our first year, either of us, of growing tomatoes. But I wanted as many heritage varieties as possible. This is Barry's Crazy Cherry, Alice's Dream, which is just beautiful. It just turns yellow and green and, oh, it's just lovely. And this one here is called Michael Pollen, which is, it's ripe when it turns yellow and it's so juicy. It's delicious. And then is a cantaloupe melon. I wasn't quite sure whether they'd take at all, but they have. Something I never thought I'd see in Scotland. I feel so at home here, it's ridiculous, you know. So I can't see another place like this.
No, I certainly wouldn't swap it either. You know, it has been a challenge getting to where we're at. But, you know, the great thing is there's so much to look forward to in the future and where we can build on from here.
I have very happy memories of holidaying on Knoydart. It's a beautiful place, but gosh, it's wild. It's very harsh, and the conditions for gardening there are beyond anything that most of us can imagine. And by the way, seaweed is, of course, fantastic stuff for any garden, but it is restricted in access. So if you're inspired to gather some for yourself, just make sure that you can do so legally at the right time and the right place. And for most of us, seaweed extract does the job very well indeed. Now, I'm in the dry garden because I need to do some work with my bearded irises, mainly as a result of last summer's hot weather. Conventionally, bearded irises love a really good baking in the summer. You plant the rhizomes so they're proud of the surface of the soil. They get baked by the summer sun, and then they flower gloriously from mid-May to mid-June. That's the theory. This year, only about 6 of these produced a flower spike, and the rest, nothing at all. And I was trying to work out what the problem was, and I've come to the conclusion that they got over-baked last summer. I remember a gardener in Spain who said that she buried her rhizomes beneath the soil because it was too hot in Andalusia, where she was growing them. Well, it was hotter here last summer than it was in southern Spain. And if climate change is going to mean we're going to have these weeks of extreme heat, I think that's inhibiting the flowering. So my plan is to dig them all up, divide them as necessary, replant half of them a bit deeper, maybe enriching the soil a bit, and the other half I'm going to make another bed. I'm not quite sure where, but I'll pot them up and get them ready, and that can be done in the next few weeks. The first thing I'm going to do is lift them, and I'll show you how to divide a bearded iris, whether it's flowering or not, because when they get congested, they will flower much less well. So get underneath the plant, and there we go. Now, if I put this on here, now you can see that this is very congested. You can see I've got 3 rhizomes, and each one would make a separate plant. So what I'm going to do is, here we go, and then having separated them, I can just ease the roots out. So there is a plant. Now that, I need to cut the end off, like that, and there I have a perfectly good iris to pot up or plant out accordingly. But what I will do to all of them is cut the leaves back. because although obviously you need the green leaves to feed the rhizome, and that in turn feeds next year's flower, if I plant that, it hasn't got any anchorage in the soil, and the wind will just knock it over and break the roots. So what you do is just cut that back by half, like that, and that just stops windrock. That's the only reason you do it. Right, that will go in. I will divide up this clump and maybe a few more, but it's going to take a long day's work, but I'll just do a few to start with. But while I'm preparing the few I am going to do, here's some jobs for you this weekend. Buddleia is in full bloom at the moment, but the flowers fade quickly and don't look so good. So if you remove these faded ones, it will encourage side shoots which will carry a fresh display well into September. Tomatoes are starting to set fruit and ripen. And to speed up this process, remove all foliage beneath the bottom truss and any leaves that are obscuring the fruit, and this will mean that they get maximum sun and ripen quickly. It will also help ventilation, which in turn will reduce the risk of tomato blight. By the way, if you have any foliage that is tightly curled, don't worry, it simply is a sign of uneven temperatures. At this time of year, sharp tools are doubly important. So on a rainy day, it's a good idea to get all your cutting implements out, clean them off with wire wool, and then give them a really sharp edge. And having done that, oil them, preferably with camellia oil, but any oil will do. And then they are ready for action. These are some of the irises that I'm digging up and dividing so I can replant them deeper and try and get them to flower next year. Now before you pot them up or plant them out, check through each rhizome. Check the roots are okay, which they are in this case. The leaves are nice and healthy. There is no reason why that shouldn't grow perfectly well and, we hope, flower. And remember, my guess is that this has baked too hot. And so what I'm going to do is replant it deeper to protect it from too much sun. Now that's against everything that we've been taught about growing bearded irises, but I want to see if it works as an experiment. Now in terms of potting up, you need a really gritty mix. So we'll put some in like that, a little bit more. Now what I'm going to do is plant it below the surface of the soil to protect it from the sun. And so I'll put that in there like that and cover that over. Right, well, I've got a lot to do and it will take a little while, and certainly we've run out of time for that today. Next week, Francis will be joining you, and it's on Thursday night at the later time of 9 o'clock. And I'll see you back here at Longmeadow, by which time I should have done all this, in a couple of weeks' time. Till then, bye-bye.